I think it's super healthy that we reflect on the project. And so it's something that healthy that we do, but also think that we could be better at,
Yeah.
even on successful projects, right? Because I think that helps develop our system. But it's going, okay, when things go sideways, when things go south, look in the mirror and
Hmm.
what could we have done differently? What could we have done better? But I feel like, yeah, the biggest takeaway is being reflective, being honest
Yeah.
about ourselves, our product, like our work. What have we done? What have we missed? Where do we drop the ball?
Hmm.
If we did, I think that is the biggest takeaway.
Come on in. Hi, this is Jack Baldwin. You're listening to By Design. Today, I'm joined with Kalyn Kight. Kalyn, how are you?
Yeah, doing well, doing well. Enjoying the fall weather starting to roll in North.
Oh my gosh, I woke up and I needed a jacket, and it's been a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah, I probably don't need a sweatshirt, but I'm just wearing it because I want to today. So
Are you like pumpkin spice everything right now, or are you?
No. I mean, listen, I like pumpkin spice. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like I gotta at least wait till October. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like September's a little bit early for me on that.
Yeah.
I just started drinking hot coffee. Like if I go out, in the summer I typically do ice. So let me
Right.
just settle into the cooler weather first, and then I'll dive into the pumpkin spice world.
Right. I mean, fall in North Georgia is awesome.
Yes,
Especially if
yes.
you're up in like Jasper and LJ, go picking some apples. It doesn't
Hmm.
get old to me.
Right, right.
Watching it, and yeah, driving up in the mountains, up where you live in Blairsville, and where I am in Ball Ground, we have some really nice scenery around here.
Yes, yes. Well, I actually won't be able to enjoy most of the fall. But yeah, fall up here is beautiful. So,
What do you mean you're not going to enjoy most of the fall?
well, I will not be in Georgia for a lot of October. I'll be working elsewhere for that month, mainly.
Is this like an undisclosed location? Or?
No, I'll be in Switzerland.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I
yeah.
wanted to
Well,
hear.
so I'll be enjoying the fall colors there.
Well, I'm going to make you do a podcast from Switzerland, and we're going to get it
Okay.
on video with like those beautiful mountains in the background.
All right, all right. We can. All right. Well, we can manage that. We can manage
Cool.
that.
I mean, if we make James get up at 5 a.m. to
True.
do these shows with us, then we can do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know you've been to Switzerland before, so you're going back. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited. So I'm gonna be visiting a friend, and so it'll be a good time. So
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to hear about it. I hope you bring me
mhm.
back lots of cheese and chocolate, and maybe
Yep.
a custom watch or something.
Yeah.
No. Um, Yeah, well, Kalyn, thanks for joining me. I wanted to do a one-on-one conversation and really just talk about business.
Mhm.
Talk about business.
Yeah.
So, for those people who don't know, maybe this is their first time listening. Kalyn and I are business partners. We started Reynard Architectural Designs together with our third partner, James. And so, Kalyn, what's your role? How would you describe what you
Mhm.
do at Reynard?
Sure. Well, I'm sure everyone can, me, you, and James probably can say that we wear a lot of different hats.
Or the same hat sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. But I like to refer to myself as the behind the scenes person.
Yeah.
Where James is producing the product, you're selling the product. I'm kind of on the back end with budgeting, financial things, invoicing, analytics, forecasting, that type of thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I always describe you as our CFO, even before you were
Yes.
officially our CFO. I think we had
Right.
that conversation a few years ago. But
Right. Right.
um,
It feels weird, honestly, to give myself that title. So,
yeah,
yeah.
well,
Yeah.
as long as I can make up a title for myself, then we'll go with it. But
I mean, I was probably CEO, honestly.
yeah,
So,
well, I'll go CEO and we'll call James the CAO. Does that works? Chief Architectural Officer or
sure. Or,
Chief
or like,
CTO?
basically CTO. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I would probably put it as.
Well, yeah, I mean, and to your point, I mean, we're three partners. We're equal managing partners. One of us focuses on sales and marketing, one of on the product development, the other on the financial side of it. But
Mhm.
you are very much day to day involved in the strategic planning of our business.
Mhm.
You, me, and James have weekly calls
Yes.
on every Thursday where we gather and just talk about how did the week go? What did we learn? What do we want to do better? I feel like we've gotten a really good rhythm and a really good dynamic between the three of us. But even before we started the company, a lot of our conversations that you and I had were really critical in kind of forming what we wanted to be. What was cool is that we both started with the same why. Like why we want to do it is that, and James shares that vision too, but our why is we want to see people design home spaces with us and create home environments together. And so the more we focus on that, a lot of the decisions that we've made is just like, how can we deliver that better? How can we make that a fun, collaborative, and enjoyable experience? And so, yeah, you've added to that. And so that's why I thought our conversation today could become a series of conversations in which we just kind of open up the pull back the curtain, let people, potential entrepreneurs or even just people who follow our business and our clients, that they would know, how do we think about our business?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had three topics I'm going to throw your way.
All right.
Us to talk about. Well, the big topic is problems. How do we address problems, especially unforeseen ones, as a leadership team? Because a lot of business planning is about planning for the future, and it's hard to plan for what you don't know is going to happen. But unforeseen things happen all the time. A good example is 2020. Not just because of the pandemic, but you and I were working together at a company, and we had one thing in mind in January of 2020, and that totally changed by March.
Yeah, right.
And so there were some lessons learned. So the big topic, how do you address unforeseen problems as a leadership team? And I'm going to throw three types of problems to you for us to discuss. One is a hiring problem. How do we amend or adjust to a hiring problem? Second is a client problem. Maybe we lose a client. Maybe a client becomes a problem. Maybe something goes south. How do we adjust to that? And then the third would be a financial problem. What do we do when a financial situation comes our way? So let's start with a hiring situation, Kalyn.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on when we are hiring? Let's say we start the hiring process.
Right.
Let's start the conversation there and just say, what are the things you're looking for to make sure that we're making a smart hire? What are the questions you're asking yourself or asking that candidate?
Sure. Well, internally, I think obviously my role, the biggest thing is financial, and projecting that and forecasting that on bringing people on in any capacity, whether it's a contract situation, an hourly situation, a potential employee, full time. There's just so many factors to look into on the budgeting side and financial side. And I would say even more so in our scenario as an architectural design company, because of the way that money comes in. We're a very sporadic cash collector. So, it's difficult. Sometimes you can work on averages, but you almost have to, you're going to have months that are slower than others. And so it's all about forecasting. How do you make wise financial decisions given the way that money comes into our business? We're a daily revenue collector nor weekly revenue collector. Typically it's very, very sporadic. So that presents its own challenge. But as far as, hiring and the type of individual and things like that, I think first and foremost, we look at cultural fit. And for us, I think that means a very specific thing. And probably most companies would say that nowadays. But we want people to engage with our vision and who we are, because that is what makes us produce good quality. And so I think that's one of the first things that we look at. And then we'll look at technical skills. Like, obviously, you have to be able to do what you say that you can do and what we need. I mean, that's a given. But yeah, so obviously the technical skills and having the ability to do what the job entails is big. But I think for us specifically, and a problem maybe a lot of small companies go through is defining the actual role.
Yeah.
Which a lot of times we're put in a position where we're almost kind of trying to
making it up as we go.
Yeah, we're making it up as we go, and we're
Yeah.
also trying to solve typically an immediate need. You know,
Right,
like
right.
something that we're like, there's a hole in our boat, and we got to plug this up.
It's reactive, which is not a
Yes.
good place to hire from.
No, it's not. It's not the best, and that's what's just so hard. I think I would imagine most all small businesses could probably relate that it's just so hard to, when you're in that beginning phase, and maybe not at the beginning, but whenever you get to where you're starting to grow enough that you have to bring in help.
Yeah.
That is just such a hard place to be, to make decisions for personnel, budgeting, and structure. I mean, like I said, trying to develop a job description on something that we are, like you said, kind of making it up as you go.
Yeah.
It's just a difficult place to be. So
yeah. So it's kind of summarize what you're saying. The first question when I come to you, like I always do, as I'm typically the one going, "Hey, I want to hire somebody." And I think what makes us good partners is that there's good friction. And I don't think all friction is bad. In fact, I think a lot of friction is great when, and that's what I want. A lot of times I'm seeking that friction. I'm not looking for a yes. I'm looking for, I am looking for a yes, but I'm looking for all the reasons we shouldn't do something, so that when we arrive to yes, we feel great about, like, all hands on deck, like we're behind this. But your thought process is, can we financially do it? Is it a cultural fit? And can they? And then, are we trying to fix a problem? You know, and if we are, like, what problem are we trying to fix? And sometimes I think we've come away from a hiring decision or a hiring conversation and decided maybe it was not wise to hire in a reactive mode, but it exposed a weakness that we didn't know we had. And at least we need to come up with some long-term solutions for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on the topic of hiring, though, we've had some, I hate to call anybody a bad hire. I don't think that's fair to the person. I think there was always a reason we brought them on at that time, but maybe a better phrase would be a bad fit.
Sure.
So let's think about a time when we brought somebody on and it was a bad fit. What were some of the takeaways that you can recall from some of those situations?
Yeah. Well, and we've already mentioned it, but I think one of the main takeaways is being in that reactive mode, right? Like, there's a hole in our boat, we have to plug it. Like, there is no other option for us.
Right.
We have to plug it, and what happens is that hole is temporary, or that fix is temporary, I should say. And so then it's gonna come up again down the road. Where we've just put a Band-Aid on something, we didn't actually solve the problem that we have.
Well, let's contextualize that a little bit more for architectural firm. A reactive problem for us a good example might be, we've taken on more projects than we can maybe handle.
Right. Yeah.
So so the problem A is a lot of projects and not enough manpower. So in that situation, how did we handle it well? And how did we maybe make some mistakes and could have handled it better?
Sure. It makes total sense that our reactive mode is based off of our product. I mean, for architecture, I feel like that's one of the biggest things. Like, you take on more work than you have manpower to do. I think the good takeaway that we took away from a couple situations is, we did end up fixing, at least putting a Band-Aid on a problem. Like, we could have very easily been like, it'll be fine, it's fine, we'll get through it, and it'd be a complete disaster, you know? And so we did try to identify it and fix it immediately. And we did the best, I feel like, that we could in the time that we had and the situation that we were in. And then obviously negative takeaways are maybe foreseeing that a little earlier. I think is one of the biggest things. Like, we caught it, but now looking back on a couple scenarios, we would say okay, now we know the warning signs.
Yes.
We can communicate those warning signs, and then we can say, okay, we've got to put something in place to safeguard ourselves from this again.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to owning a business. There are unforeseen things that pop up that you can't ever plan for, right? That you can't ever put on a list of things going, these are all the bad things that are going to happen. But yeah, so those are a couple, pros and cons. I think
those are good. Yeah, I think some of my takeaways from looking at a hiring decision we made recently that was probably reactive. One, I would agree with you is maybe doing a better job of forecasting. And then in addition to forecasting, what's our threshold?
Yep.
So kind of asking ourselves those two questions, like what do we have coming? Deals that haven't been won yet. What is the likelihood of bringing on those deals? Not just a feeling, but having some kind of a metric, because it's not it's not very predictable, because we're working with human beings who are the most unpredictable thing in the world.
Right.
Especially with homeowners, when you're working with your home, there's a whole lot of things that can affect that process. And some of those are emotional, some of those are situational, but doing a better job of forecasting, meaning understanding what's coming down as far as workload and identifying what that would look like 3 to 4 months from now, not just 30 days from now, or even looking out 6 to 7 to 8 to a year. What does that look like? So forecasting, what would we do to know what our threshold is? What does a good workload look like that's manageable for us? Another takeaway I think back on is maybe giving too much too soon to somebody. And sometimes you do that with a lot of hopeful expectation. You're thinking, hey, I love this person, great personality. They said yes. They seem confident, and you also want to believe that they can take on, frankly, for lack of a better term, take on your problems. You want to know that they can bring on this project and handle it with care. But I think one thing that we learned was don't put somebody in front of a fire hose. Maybe put them in front of a drinking fountain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. And just having those expectations on what this person in reality can actually do, which is hard, because again, in our situation, in a lot of small businesses situation, like if you don't have people to design your product, aka your homes, like we're not in a good spot. And so but having those expectations on individual hiring is, I think, another takeaway too, that we can look at as something that we would do in the future for other hiring things.
And also systems. I was thinking about that. I went back and listened to our conversation with Mark R. LePage. He's the founder of Entree Architect, and so he's kind of an unofficial mentor to us. And he did a podcast episode with us. And I remember one of the things he said that he talked about was creating a system that is scalable and can be duplicated and handed off. It's not just us. But if Reynard is what we hope it will be, it's something that other people can step into and provide the same kind of experience to our clients that we hope that they will experience when they talk about Reynard. We haven't always done that. Unfortunately, we haven't provided the kind of experience that we want to when we set out for every single client. It just doesn't always happen. But our mission is to keep getting better at providing that experience. And the way to do that is to create a system. And I think if we keep developing our system, that somebody can step into that system and like, here's point 1, here's point 2. We're not just making it up, but you're actually stepping into a system. And that takes time. It takes a lot of trial and error to piece together. But when you're in that reactive mode, like we've been talking about, sometimes you throw somebody into a problem. You're not throwing them into a system. You're throwing them into a problem. And they're trying to adapt.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's pivot into a client. Sometimes clients don't go the way we hope they will.
Right.
I'm the sales guy with Reynard Architectural Designs. And so I'm pretty much always the first person from our company that gets to meet with the client. And so I bring that up because it's personal. It's
Sure.
when we sign that agreement and we have that project kickoff call, it seems like there's so much enthusiasm, and you
Yeah.
are friends with these people, and it is personal. You can't
Right.
help but not let it be personal because it's their home.
Right.
And so when it goes south, it is deflating. It's
Oh, sure.
very deflating when a client decides to move on, or they don't finish a project, or they are unhappy.
Yep.
So Kalyn, with clients that have, let's just say a project didn't work out as we anticipated, what are some key takeaways you've observed in the last couple of years in those situations that we faced together?
Yeah. I think it's super healthy that we reflect on the project. And so it's something that healthy that we do, but also think that we could be better at, even on successful projects, right? Because I think that helps develop our system. But it's going, okay, when things go sideways, when things go south, look in the mirror and what could we have done differently? What could we have done better? But I feel like, yeah, the biggest takeaway is being reflective, being honest about ourselves, our product, like our work. What have we done? What have we missed? Where do we drop the ball? If we did, I think that is the biggest takeaway in that. And then just an understanding of like, this is going to happen. I feel like if you go into it expecting that this is not going to happen, is you're just asking for disappointment, a continual state of disappointment. And we've not had many, projects that have gone south or sideways, only, less than 5, I would say. And so, but like you said, they hurt. But it's just going to be part of the thing. So you're not in like a constant state of disappointment.
Right.
That's a bit exaggerative, but if you're expecting to like never miss, I feel like it causes a lot of emotional distress.
But you're putting unrealistic expectation out there that is probably not good for your soul and good for your culture and your environment.
Exactly. So, but regardless of where in the project that it went sideways or south or whatever, I think the biggest takeaway, like I said a couple times now, is just that reflective aspect of, and being the honesty of looking at ourselves.
I think there's a tendency, and you and I have both been in work environments in which, well, client A is unhappy and taking their business elsewhere, and then the kind of the attitude around the water cooler is like, well, screw those guys, they're jerks. And well, I didn't want to work with them anyway. I mean, and that's maybe it's true. Maybe the client is a jerk. Maybe somebody, they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Who knows what kind of things are going on? But I just have never found that to be helpful input. No. Like it's you can't work from that. No. You can't work from the assumption that they're a jerk.
Right.
Even if it's true, and rarely is it true. I mean, and so there's always like there's always so many facets to a story, and there's plenty of cliches like perception is reality, and that is true to some degree. And so I do think there's a part of it where we might have to say they were a hard customer to please, or there were some factors outside of our control. While that may be true, the only thing that's helpful is what you said, which is self-reflection. If you look back at it and go, what could we do differently the next time around? That would be a game changer. Or what weakness did this expose on our end that we didn't even know? Like, what did we not even know that was hard for us? And, or maybe we need to adjust. If we're saying that this person isn't a good fit, and maybe that was true, then what is a good fit?
Right.
We certainly went through that because we started our company. I remember coming to you and saying, hey, let's do residential only. We're only going to do residential designs. And I'm like, well, that's very focused, right? Like that's a highly focused market. And then you go out there.
One would think, yes.
And then you go out there and start meeting with residential clients, and you find out that they're not all the same.
Yep.
And so, some jobs may have been a great fit for certain architectural firms, but I think over time we started to find out if somebody's not a good fit, it's not because they're a jerk, so to speak. It might be because we're really good at these types of tasks and these types of projects.
Yes. Yes.
And we took on some projects that were not necessarily in line with what we're really good at. And that's why it wasn't a fit. So then it becomes kind of like honing and as Stephen Covey would say in 7 Habits is then you start sharpening the saw. Like what's going to make us better at that. So what are some other lessons that you learned through some of those client situations? Like maybe an example of after some reflection that we did together, what was it that you kind of took away from a recent project?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I think there has been a couple that it's not been the right client, in all honesty, right? It's just not been our ideal, what we like to call internally as our ideal client. That's not an exclusive type of terminology. It's just we do a certain thing very well, like you said, and our process is geared towards that primarily.
Yeah.
And so when you try to put a square peg in a round hole, it's not doing it. And and so that's one of the things that after reflecting that we found out, I believe. The next one is communication and transparency with our clients.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that we as Reynard want to be so good at.
Yeah.
That's what we want to set ourselves apart, is that communication, is that transparency, because in the architectural field, a lot of times it's not. And so, yeah, so I think we've had to learn, we've got to communicate better. We've got to be clearer. We've got to communicate more often, whatever the case may be, on the specifics. But I think that's something else that we've found. And trying to think if there's anything else off the top of my mind.
Well, when you said communication, like what a good takeaway, if I could do some of these projects over again, and I'm thinking of some specific ones that you and I've worked through together. I kind of like to think, what if I could go back in time, how would I do it differently as an exercise in a way that's helpful, not in a way that's like self-deprecating. Right. But if I could kind of replay the script, a lot of times I think I would have gone back and set better expectations, not false expectations that people wanted to hear, but clearer expectations. Right. I think that's something we've gone back and forth on a lot. We went back and said, well, how did they arrive to those conclusions? Well, we left it open. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. They filled in the gaps of what we said and what we didn't say with their expectation. Yep. And it's not that we're trying to control the narrative, but we should be very, very clear on, hey, this is a realistic timeline. A timeline is usually the thing that bites us the most. And as you were saying with architectural design, there's so many factors at play and it's hard to control the timeline. But it is like the thing that creates the most anxiety. Yeah. So if I could go back in time and kind of redo these conversations, I probably would have set more realistic expectations and clearer expectations about what the timeline's going to look like, why it's ambiguous and where it can be firm, what we can do to make it less ambiguous. Like really, it's hard because people don't like hearing, you have to wait. They don't like, and sometimes you have to give them, maybe a timeline that's not what they had in their mind, and there's going to be some friction with that. Yeah. But it's so much better to have that conversation from day one, because it's a lot worse to have that conversation on day 90. Yep. And say, yeah, you're looking at another 90 days or whatever. Like that's a harder conversation. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you nailed it when you said communication, and not just talking a lot, but meaningfully communicating. Here's where we're at. Here's when you'll hear from us. Here's where we're at. Here's where you hear from us, and kind of getting into that rhythm and routine early instead of later. Yeah, yeah, and the education piece too, right? Oh yeah, we've have kind of added into that fold with communication, because a lot of times, through no fault of anybody, there's actually not a clear understanding of what architectural design actually entails. Yeah, there's this false sense of slap some things together for me and give it to me by the weekend, and it's Tuesday, you know what I mean? Like, and so I think there's some
yeah, for whatever reason, there's just some missing pieces as far as that's concerned on education on what exactly it entails for architectural design, which we now have then said, okay, we've got to be almost an education piece for our clients as well. Not only communication, as far as our process, be very, very clear of our SOP, our process, etc., but also this is just generally what architectural design is.
Yeah.
What does structural engineering mean, when we do that in the final phase, all those kind of things, which help, again, in my mind, that help the first bit, communication, expectations, clients know exactly what they're getting into when they sign that contract with us.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to think of a good analogy, and the best one I could really come up with is, we say with, we keep saying design with.
Yeah.
And I think the more we hammer on that, it's like if you come to an experience and you think it's going to be a quick little hour-long hike. Your expectation is it's going to be an hour-long hike, and we'll go and we'll come back, versus we're going to go on an adventure.
Yeah.
And I guess that would be kind of the ideal client for us, is somebody who looks at this and goes, we're going on an adventure together. We're not going on a short little excursion. We're actually, this is going to be something we sweat through. It's going to be something we might hurt through. It's might be some twists and turns we don't expect.
Right.
But it's our job to be with you.
Yeah.
On that. And you're right. Some people come to us with a job and they're like, hey, can you do this for, we keep saying it. Is it for, or is it with? Are we doing a job for people, or are we doing it with them? Because if you're going to go with us, and there's a lot of things, like, as we've gotten better at our process and who we are, it's become a lot clearer which people have that attitude. And it's not a right or wrong. There's not a good or a bad. It's just,
exactly.
Some people do. They want an hour-long hike.
Right.
Hey, there's people who want to do an hour-long hike with you. We're the company who wants to do the adventure with you, and we want to take you on a journey. And I think there's like some little telltale signs that come up along the way, and there's better questions we can ask to find out, do we sound like a right fit? Because is that what you guys are gearing up for?
Right.
Are you packed for that, or did you just bring a water bottle?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Good. It was on the fly.
That's impressive.
Well, let's talk about a financial disappointment, or maybe, disappointment is a strong word, but something that doesn't go the way we expect.
Yeah.
Because, and we've kind of hit on this a couple different ways, because hiring and clients, those do affect our bottom line.
Yeah.
But how have we handled, I can think of some recent financial disappointments or unexpected financial commitments that we had. What was your thought process on one of those recent times? Like, what did we learn from that?
Sure. Well, I do want to preface this by, I think, my background is accounting and bookkeeping, so this is right up my alley. But I do believe that we put ourselves, even with those unforeseen things and setbacks, we were able to conquer them without much fuss, because we put ourselves in a good financial position from day one. So I do want to preface even us chatting about this, like, if we did not prepare and save and budget and do the things like that, we would not be where we are right now with the financial setbacks. And so, so preface all that. But as far as, financial setbacks, unforeseen things, that's going to happen, just like with anything in business, just like we've talked about. But yeah, the hiring is a financial, if something goes wrong there, that's a lot of wasted money. And the clients coming back, like, I know Reynard has had to refund a couple clients as well. And so, and that's money that's spent. And so I want to be very clear with that is too, because of the situation we're in, is when we receive money for a project, that money is gone to resources, and is spent. And so when we have to refund, that is taking out of our.
It's
our
not just
bottom
that we turned and gave the money back.
line. Right. That
Yeah.
money is gone, and
Yeah,
so
because
that's
we put people to work right away. I mean,
Yeah.
we're that's human resources that are allocated right away towards a project.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's I know for the client, it feels like they're waiting. You know,
Mhm.
they put a payment down on a project and they're waiting on those deliverables. And some people appreciate it and some people just don't see it, but there is time that is being spent and there's opportunity cost and
Right.
and there's a lot. And that's not to, browbeat anybody about that. It's just more of that's an actualization. That's a reality for us is that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that being said, like those hurt, like those
Oh yeah.
those are probably the biggest unforeseen kind of financial real punches in the gut,
Oh, yeah.
are those, because that's, again, you're just dishing out a decent chunk of money from the bottom line. But yeah, I think the biggest financial unforeseen things that we have had are the hiring.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if I would necessarily characterize it as a bad hire. It was more so maybe not the best.
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so those, and then the customer refunds, right? Like those are the biggest, have been I think in my mind, the biggest financial hurdles that we've had to look at.
Oh, and I want to touch on both of those from two different points. The one is, yeah, you're right. We've done a refund. There were times when we had some internal discussions and we were like, we could fight this. We should fight this. We've been in our rights to say, hey, we delivered to you what we said we would. But I think the conclusion we kept arriving to is like, there's a very specific type of experience that we want our clients to have. And if they didn't have that experience, then that's where we feel like it falls on us. And it's also responsibility, kind of talking about our earlier conversation. If we're looking for who to blame or who to get mad at, that's wasted energy. So some of those conclusions were about us owning it. Cause even if it was not a right fit hire, we were the ones who made the hire. So, we could very easily go, well, so-and-so's fault that you didn't get the experience you want. But no, we put that person in your project and we had to own it. And so that's why we made those decisions. We wanted to, it wasn't just about protecting our reputation or saving face, but it's just about when we take on a project, we got to own it. We got to own it from start to finish. The other point I wanted to talk about was you mentioned preparedness. And I know the answer to this, but I think it'd be cool for anybody listening to kind of hear, what did we do from day one to set ourselves up?
Sure. So from day one, we basically said, okay, any revenue that we receive, we basically have this super complex and complicated spreadsheet that just keeps evolving.
I'm kind of feeling like it's going to become less complex over time.
Yes,
I'm hoping, but you're right. I mean, it's complex because
we want to do it right. Like
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So I laugh about it because it's like we did the right thing, but
it's an algorithm.
Every end of the month for a while there, I was like, good gosh, what is happening again? But yeah, we basically said, okay, if we get X dollars for a project, we allocate X dollars to OpEx, savings, and tax. And we pick those percentages. And then obviously then we say, okay, well, what are the owners going to take, as well? I mean, that's just, look, if you own a business and a small business, like that is part of the equation. You're not getting around that. No one is working for free.
Well, it's four buckets really. You mentioned three of them. So it's labor is a bucket, operating expenses, you call it OpEx, but we went ahead and said, like, what does it cost to operate? You said savings. So our rainy day, like we look at it and go, there are going to be rainy days. We're not going to pretend like there's not. So let's go ahead and assume there's, so we put a percentage for each of those. And then the fourth one you mentioned was tax. And so we know that when we generate revenue, we pay tax on it. It's stupid to operate as though you don't, even if at the end of the year it balances out because of how you spend your money. You just want to assume that there's going to be a taxable rate on your revenue. So we've tweaked those percentages over time, but basically it's those four.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly right. So, but yeah, so we developed that, and it was we did not waver at all
Mhm.
on that. It was
Yeah.
we were very strict on this money is going into this bucket, no questions asked, no excuses. Like this is where it's going.
Yeah.
And we've done that for over a year now. And again, when you're looking at a customer refund, if we are not in that position, it's a different conversation, right?
Yeah.
It is. This is a different conversation. It's probably a panic situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's really the gist of it, is just having those buckets, just whatever percentage, anyone decides. But yeah, it's extremely helpful. So we those percentages have changed, have altered. We've looked at different breakdown of project income. We've looked at so many things and really developed, I think, a good system to go off of. And but yeah, so that's really where the preparedness is just honestly as simple as it is.
Yeah.
Just putting the money in different buckets to save for the unforeseen.
Yeah, and it's one of those systems, and the good thing about a system is it's a machine.
Yep.
And that machine can get better with time. You can put some oil there, or put a new piece of technology there.
Yep.
You can teach other people how to run the machine, and but it's evolving. I think that's kind of a good attitude that we've had. We've taken the approach where it's like, and I know it's frustrating for you, especially somebody who doesn't like change.
Right.
I know it's not always comfortable to change a system, but I think we've done it. And then there's been times when I've had a conversation with you and I've come up to you and I've been like, hey, do we need to change this? Or am I just being like anxious about this?
Right.
We had that conversation this morning. I think I said,
Mhm.
am I just being anxious? And you're kind of like, yeah, you are just kind of being anxious.
Right.
But that's a real conversation because, that's kind of a sidebar to this whole conversation, is that as a business owner, it is a emotional thing. If we don't acknowledge feelings and have a safe place to interact with feelings, if we just pretend like feelings don't exist or that they're outside of the equation, then it's like a sleeping giant.
Oh yeah, it's coming out, and you might not want it to, but it's going to come out and swing, and it's going to wreck a building potentially.
Right.
And so yeah, I don't think you can ignore. Yeah, you can't. Even beyond just owners, right? You're employees, people within the organization. Like you cannot ignore that type of stuff.
Well, and I don't know if this is true for you as much too, but I've certainly come from the work world in which people are very much like, you leave your feelings at the door, check them out, and to some degree, yes, to some degree,
right.
you come into a situation with professionals